Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Ergo Expo webinar. Cummins Innovation Reduces Injury and Expedites Return to Work. We have a great hour planned for you. Joining us is Chris Shieldsmith, Corporate Ergonomics Leader for the aforementioned Cummins, Inc. We're also glad to have Angela Berwick, Manager of OnSite Services for BTE Workforce Solutions. And speaking of BTE, I'd like to offer a big thank you to them for sponsoring today's event. BTE Workforce Solutions delivers unparalleled results and return on investment, working with employers and insurers to optimize productivity, lower absenteeism and turnover, improve safety, reduce injuries and claims costs, and measurably increase performance. With BTE, people and companies achieve better outcomes. Now, before we get started, I just need to cover a couple of housekeeping notes. First, be sure to keep your computer's volume turned up so that you can hear the audio. If you experience any issues with the audio, press the request button in the participants box at the top right corner of your screen to receive further instructions. To ask a question during the event, you may use the Q&A panel located on your screen. If you encounter a problem during today's webinar, you can contact WebEx Technical Support at 866-29-3239. Also note that within 24 hours, you'll receive a link to an archived version of this presentation that will be available online about a week from today, and will be available for a year. Today's webinar will then join previous events in the Webinars tab of ergoexpo.com. On the right side, you'll see all the available on-demand webinars for you to view at your own convenience. And then after today's webinar, a short survey will pop up. Once completed, you'll then be able to print a certificate of completion and use it to apply for CEUs and COC points with BCSP directly. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to today's speakers. Angela Berwick is Manager of OnSite Services for BTE Workforce Solutions. Her professional focus is in-depth program development for on-site prevention programs. Angela holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Occupational Science and a Master's of Science in Occupational Therapy from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and she is CEAS certified. We also have Chris Shieldsmith. Chris is the Corporate Ergonomics Leader for Cummins, where he delivers implementation of industry-leading ergonomic and safety solutions and processes from the site level to the global level. He has been instrumental in establishing a common approach to ergonomics at Cummins that has led to record low injury rates. Chris earned a master's degree in ergonomics from Indiana University, and he also holds a Six Sigma Green Belt certification. Please welcome our speakers, and guys, the audience is all yours.
Thank you. And welcome. Here's another shot at both of us. But quick look at the agenda. We're going to talk about who we are, both from Cummins and BTE. I'm going to talk about where we started in this safety journey for Cummins. We're going to talk about some strategies that we employed to meet these goals. And then we're going to talk about what's next and actually hopefully give you some good takeaways. If there's something that doesn't get answered, please feel free to submit some Q&A questions. We love questions, and we really want to give you value in this presentation. So please feel free to ask away. Thank you. Okay, so first off, who are we? I'm going to start with Cummins. Cummins is a global power leader. We have over 45,000 employees, and we're a Fortune 200 company. Our company is made up of 4 business units. We're best well known for our legendary diesel engines. They range from 2.8 liter all the way up to a 95 liter engine. Picture something the size of a van, about the size of a 95 liter. We also have a power systems business, which includes our power generation equipment. So we attach these engines to these gen sets, and these generators go in things from an RV or a home unit all the way up to generators that can provide backup power for large hospitals and even small cities. We also manufacture quite a bit of different components. We make fuel systems, We make filtration products, turbocharging equipment, and we also make emissions equipment to keep us at the forefront of low emissions equipment. And then we also have a distribution business that sells and services all of the products I just mentioned. So just a quick look at our supply chain and the actual breadth of it. You'll see there's not too many spots on the globe where Cummins doesn't have a location. So the reason I'm showing you this is just to give you an idea when it comes to health and safety and risk management. There's really, we've got a large scope of work ahead of us that's something we need to address. I don't want to spend too much time on recognition, but we have been recognized in various forms. One thing we're really proud of, though, is the Robert W. Campbell Award that we received from the National Safety Council in 2014. This award is for excellence in health and safety, and as you'll see here momentarily, we have made some really good strides. There's still a huge road ahead of us to go down, but we have made some good strides, and it was really an honor to receive this award.
All right, now who is BTE? BTE measures and improves human performance. BTE is both a manufacturer of medical devices as well as provides consultative program development solutions for employers. We have two divisions, if you will, but our products team develops and manufactures clinically designed medical devices that are used for physical rehabilitation, sports, endurance, strength training, and then also work performance measurement and improvement. Our products are used worldwide and can be found in hospitals, rehab, and sports medicine clinics, as well as industrial settings. And then Workforce Solutions provides employers with a full continuum of services from pre-hire to return to work and really everything in between. Workforce Solutions works with employers to develop and customize outcome-based plans to increase employee productivity and engagement while also having a reduction in claims, recordables, and employee turnover.
So moving on to the journey that we've gone through at Cummins, and I asked the question, where did we start? So what we're looking at here, this is basically our safety or OSHA incidence rate indicator. Looking back to 2007, you'll see for about a 4-year period we had some huge reductions. So I asked the question, continuous improvement in life after you pick the low-hanging fruit. What do you do? The low-hanging fruit is represented in that big red oval. As you can see, we did make some really big strides. So what did we do during that period? What is low-hanging fruit? So what it was that we really did was we implemented a health and safety management system, got all of our sites on board with this common process of risk mitigation. There were a lot of opportunities, easy opportunities to improve, and that's why we saw these drastic rates, which was great. But when you get closer to zero, you know it gets more difficult. So once you pick that low-hanging fruit, you don't want to just assume that, okay, the rest of these injuries are status quo and we have to deal with it, right? No, we don't want to do that because one injury is too many. So when you look outside that red oval, you'll notice things got pretty flat. There was less variation, which was good, but at the same time, we weren't seeing continued progress. So we had to go outside the box, if you will, and look at what we could do to further reduce injuries and to further address our risk mitigation efforts. So as we dug through our data and did a lot of analysis, ergonomics is one of our #1 risks, and it always has been based on the nature of our work. We decided we needed to look at the human performance side and how we could make improvements and changes in this space. So 3 challenges, or what I'd rather call them is opportunities that we really went out to address was, first off, getting a better understanding of our risks, understanding our new hire injury rates. I'm sure many of you have to deal with new hire employees, and hiring people is a great thing, but new people in an organization that has a lot of risks potentially can be difficult to deal with. So we wanted to better understand that, and then keeping employees at work and injury-free. The first one we'll tackle is understanding risk. So we have done and we continue to do thorough ergonomics analyses throughout our sites. We use the human tech system. We have over 10,000 job assessments that's been completed in this company. We've been seeing great reductions in our ergonomics efforts. One thing about that, though, is when you're doing ergonomics assessments, ergonomics is very good at telling us whether a job or an activity or a physical effort is good or bad. What it doesn't do is tell us the actual detail behind what that task is in many cases. So we wanted to get a better understanding of the physical requirements and understand the essential functions required to complete the work based off of thorough physical demands analyses. I do want to point out that a PDA is not an ergonomics analysis, and an ergonomics analysis is not a physical demands assessment. However, one of the benefits of PDAs, and you'll probably hear me repeat this later, is it gives you a really deep understanding of the work requirements that your employees have to go through, and that can really feed your ergonomics process. So I would say that a PDA is good for bolstering your ergonomics program. However, don't use ergonomics analyses as a physical demands analysis because it doesn't cover everything. So one thing we did was we sought out to get these PDAs, and what we did is we had them conducted throughout some of our major locations, and we'll be talking more about that. New hire injury rates. This is an area where we had a lot of passion and drive to understand, but I'm just going to give you guys a watch out. If you want to start looking at not only new hires, but also the age of your employees and that type of detail, I definitely recommend getting engaged with your human resources group early and often because, as you can imagine, if you start doing this type of work and then they catch wind of it, typically it's harder to get their buy-in. But one thing we did do is we looked at this type of detail, and we did find that our new hire employees, they were getting hurt. And really, these two bullets you see here, which really is just industry research, did corroborate what was going on at our location. We were seeing the injuries in the new hires. We were actually seeing injuries also with the long-term older employees. Really, both ends of the spectrum is where we were feeling the overall ergonomics injuries. Keeping employees at work and injury-free. So really, the preventive side of it, really when we look at the soreness side and keeping soreness from becoming an actual injury, keeping it at that first aid level is very important to us. So we wanted to readdress that. We've always had early reporting programs, but we wanted to be better. So we said, let's get better. Let's try to figure out how to do this. We know we have an aging workforce. We know we have some deconditioned employees, and we really knew we needed to improve our prevention services. On the other side of it is employee engagement. Sometimes the attendance to these types of programs can be very low, so we wanted to understand how we could improve that as well. So I'm going to talk briefly about why we ended up with BTE. Why not somebody else? So like most companies, when we went out to understand who could provide these services, we have a full process through our purchasing group, but we really wanted to have a data-driven process, and that immediately helped narrow the field down. But BTE definitely came out on top there with a scientific, data-driven process. We wanted to really answer these three questions or meet these three requirements. The first being a comprehensive, thorough physical demands analysis process. The second was the ability to use that information, have access to that information, use the data easily. And then also we wanted to do post-offer of employment testing. We'd heard about it. We've seen some companies doing it, heard good things, and we wanted to make sure we had a very thorough process that could back a program like this. And BTE came out and demonstrated the ability to meet these needs. So that's how we selected them. Now we're going to move on to the strategies we employ to meet these goals. So there's 3 areas that Angela is going to talk about here momentarily. The first, when it came to understanding our risks, as I mentioned, is the physical demands analysis process. So we used that process. And then when it came to new hire injury rates, we wanted to figure out how we could improve there. And that was the post-offer of employment testing. And then keeping injuries from becoming injuries, keeping them at soreness and first aid level was also very important to us, and that prevention aspect. So we also wanted to look into the on-site services aspect of their business.
All right, so I'm going to take you through what our physical demand analysis looks like and how this ties into the first challenge of understanding that risk. So physical demand analysis, or PDA as I refer to it, is really the foundation of all the services that we offer. Understanding the risk really begins with understanding the physical demands that are required to perform the essential functions of each job. So that's where we start. We start by identifying the essential functions of a job and then define and measure the tasks that are associated with each of the essential functions. PDAs allow BTE and Cummins to truly understand what is physically required of their employees, and then help us to understand where we have those opportunities for risk abatement. So as Chris kind of talked about before, a PDA and an Ergo tool are 2 different pieces, but the PDA can identify where maybe there's a high force or a high demand, and that's information that then we can give to them, and they can prioritize their Ergo efforts and make sure that those 2 documents are fitting together, but really the PDA is going to highlight some of those areas. So getting the measurements, we utilize our proprietary software and technology, and we have a clinical team of PDA experts who specifically specialize in worksite analysis. They measure the tasks performed by Cummins employees as they observe them doing it. They are the ones who begin to build the detail of the demands as they collect the data and as they're observing the workers perform the job. We take real-time measurements of weight and force. We take multiple trials of each task. And we also use a coefficient of variance standard to verify the accuracy of our data. We then write these reports in what's called JobAble. That is a BT proprietary software that electronically stores these PDAs. So you can go into the software, you can sort PDAs, you can find PDAs, you can print them off in PDF so that you can send, save, hand out. They're very easy to read, but they're all stored right there. Another function of JobAble is also a job matching or a restriction matching. So you can enter an employee in to the software with their restrictions and instantly match their restrictions to one or many jobs in order to determine if there's a need for accommodation or their readiness to return to work. So the next solution is the post-offer employment test. So it really boils down to hiring the right person. We don't want to hire the next injury. So the key component of this program design is the development of the post-offer employment test protocol, or what, again, we call the POET. This test is a medical test that is conducted after an offer of employment is extended to a job candidate, with hiring being contingent on them passing the demands of the test. Using our PDAs as the foundation, the test is based on the essential functions of the job, and we design the task using the actual detail and replication of the demands required to perform the job. Each protocol is validated through incumbent testing, and this is really a very legally compliant process to identify candidates who have demonstrated the ability to perform the work safely and without injury. So what does this all really look like? We observe the task being done by the subject matter experts. We measure the task using our technology, and then we simulate the task on our EvalTech system. Specifically, this person is performing a push task. And just as we collect the data with our technology, we collect this data on the EvalTech system when they're simulating that task. The protocol is a battery of test components where the candidate is either going to meet the demands or not meet the demands, the basic pass or fail of the test protocol. BTE has also innovated a multi-level approach that enables job candidates to be placed in an appropriate job depending on the physical abilities demonstrated. So, for example, we may have a progressive level test, 1, 2, and 3, and depending on their performance, they can safely be placed in a job that matches their physical abilities. There are always going to be still candidates who do not pass any of the requirements, and therefore their conditional offers are rescinded. So with this process, you can see Cummins is only hiring and placing candidates who have demonstrated the ability to perform the job safely. And then on the return to work side, this same or similar protocol can also be used as a fit for duty test to expedite and assure an employee is ready to return to work. And now we'll talk about our on-site services, so keeping those employees at work and injury-free. BTE means a lot of things, BTE on-site means a lot of things at Cummins. Our goal is really to put the power of safe and healthy work habits into employees' hands through teaching them the mechanics to perform their job safely. We work directly with new and existing employees to address ergonomic and musculoskeletal concerns. So how do we do this? So as discussed with the PDAs, we really truly understand the demands of their job. We understand what they have to do each day, and we understand where the risk is. So we're able to customize our approach to meet the needs of really every employee and all the different facilities. As part of the OnSite program, we offer an early intervention program. We offer job coaching at their workstation. That's the body mechanic, posture training, task-specific stretching, work conditioning for new employees or return-to-work employees, office ergonomics, and then other prevention strategies. Our on-site services provide employees with the tools they need to work safely, self-manage signs of fatigue or weakness in order to ward off that injury or unnecessary medical visits, and then give them an immediate medical resource right at their workstation. So we put in 2 slides here of our data analytics. We do track, as Chris said, we are data-driven. So this is a sample from our EIP program. The early intervention program is when an employee has some of that soreness or fatigue, musculoskeletal in nature. They come work with our clinician in a first aid OSHA realm, and our goal is to prevent that injury from, or that soreness from becoming an injury or going further. So our first chart there is just outcomes. 86.67% of our folks who go through the program are successful, which means no further doctor visits, no diagnosis. They return to work, no further care is needed. We also track employee status. So are they full-time employees? Are they the temps or contingent workers? We watch what their improved discomfort score is. So when they come in, they give us a 1 through 10 rating. When they leave, they give us a rating, and we see that improvement. We like to track the visits and duration, so how many visits over a period of time are they coming in, and then, of course, male and female, how many people have completed the program in all. This next chart is just showing some of the metrics. So age group, body part, body region. These are really handy just to look at trends, see what we're finding. As Chris alluded to before, the age group can be very interesting once you start seeing that data come out. Here, where this is a snapshot of one plant of Cummins, but we're seeing folks, 31 to 45. That's 50% of the folks coming in with that soreness and fatigue. So it can drive some of your programs. Body part is, of course, really important. As you see, wrist and hand are majority, although this plan has a smattering of really all body parts. But we can start to tailor some programs specifically into hand and wrist, or look at, what are these folks doing? Are they tool related? Is it power? Is it, what is it? And then start kind of tailoring things down to that. So that's just a snapshot of it.
All right. Well, I'm sure everyone wants to see some results, right? So these results are from really a major location we have in Minnesota, where I would say we rolled this program out probably the most aggressively. It's really been powerful there, and we're using all the services we just discussed at this site. So this first metric, 87%, that's for our early intervention program, and 87% had a successful outcome, which really is a great number. One thing I'd like to add to an EIP program, and this is just another watch out for folks, if you currently have an EIP program, or you're talking to a vendor who may be guaranteeing or promising 100% success, you should definitely be suspect to that. Basically, 100% means that every person they see never becomes an injury. And when we think about that with what we know about people, what we know about what can happen with a musculoskeletal disorder, that's nearly impossible to achieve. So if you see 100% or you're being told 100%, I think it's time to question whether or not they're really truly following the first aid level treatment that they're allowed to follow within an EIP type program. This next one, 66% incident reduction. So this is ergonomics incidents. I have to tell you, I'm honestly blown away with this result. This site has been very aggressive in their ergonomics practices really over the last 2 years. They have been adding resources. It's been really impressive, and really the site support we've seen there is fantastic to add those resources. But really, to be able to see this type of reduction just from 2016 to 2017 year to date is really had me just really excited. I'm really proud of them. But that's a huge number for us, and that translates to around 10 incidents. So, and then return on investment. It's always good to be able to show some bottom line performance and improvement. And we have had nearly a 70% reduction in worker compensation costs over the last 2.5-year period. So this has translated to a lot of money in avoidance that we can show, and show the value of this program and the ergonomics programs. One other thing I'll add just on ROI, it's not up here, but when it comes to ergonomics, and some of you have probably talked about it in the past at the Ergo Expo, is I think there's a huge benefit to productivity when it comes to good ergonomics practices, and I do think that that's another piece that this site has really, they've really seen the benefits and value from as well. So let's talk a little bit about you, give you some takeaways. So we've got 3 points we're going to go over here to discuss, and really to just kind of give you some pointers, things we learned along the way during this type of process. So choosing the best partner for your needs. This first bullet, take stock of where your company is. I like to really associate this with the safety culture at your location or in your company. I think it's important that if you still have a pretty poor safety culture where safety or the health and safety group owns it, it's going to be difficult to get the buy-in you need to move the needle. And so a lot of times building your culture is really a foundational point to be able to get to that point in your journey where you can invest in good services, invest in ergonomics. You need the people who hold the purse strings to be behind it. So safety culture is really important. Looking at your biggest challenges, identifying these challenges is very important. I'm going to talk a little bit more in a moment about how we did that, but really getting and understanding your challenges will really help you be able to find a partner whether it's a vendor or supplier, to be able to help you there and make sure they meet your needs. These challenges, using the word opportunities rather than challenges, I think is, we got to look at it in a positive way. Once we know, it really is an opportunity. When we don't know, it's a challenge, but once we know what we need to fix, it's an opportunity. Prevention first is key. You definitely, when you're picking a partner, you want to make sure they're not always looking into treatment and the services they can provide after the injury. You want somebody who's going to help you prevent injuries. So as Angela mentioned in the EIP program, and as you just saw with the 87% success rate, prevention first is huge. And I really do think that even if it's an immature program, health and safety program, having an EIP type program is really one of the best ways to curb injuries and prevent them from becoming an injury. Hiring better, really having better hiring practices associated with programs like POET has been instrumental to the success we've had. And I know sometimes I think, I have had people talk to me about the POET process, and it seems to be one of those topics that I think people get a little uneasy about, because it's like, wow, you mean you can rescind an offer to somebody? But when you think about it, it's not just setting the company up for success, it's setting this person up for success. And if you hire somebody, or if you've ever been in a role that you cannot physically do, it's really difficult, and it's not good for that person, and really nobody wins in that situation. So the POET process was something that we really put a lot of emphasis on. And getting employees back to work faster and healthier. If you have had an injury, you need to move forward and understand how can we make sure this person has the best treatment and we're taking care of them, and what tools do we have to make sure that we can get that person back to work. And that's where the physical demands assessments are huge for us. When we know the work, when we can hop into JobAble and cross-reference any kind of restriction with those job assessments, we now know, hey, we can accommodate this person, whereas in the past we may have said, you know what, I don't think we have anywhere, and that was the problem. We had to think. We didn't have actual knowledge and fact to tell us whether or not they could be put into a role. So PDAs are huge for returning people back to work. So building, refining, and really getting your best customized solution. So it all starts with asking the right questions. I think hopefully everyone's aware of 5 why root cause analysis. I think it's a perfect analogy here. Is really you got to ask the question why, and you got to do it a lot. Getting to the root of your problems is really going to help you understand what you need to improve. And this really ties into data, which you'll see a second from the bottom point. Measure, measure, measure. It's so important. I think it was Deming who said what you don't measure doesn't get improved, or something along those lines. And it's actually, it's really the best way to put it. If you're not measuring your processes, you really should start. If you have been measuring a lot, you have a lot of data, it's time to start slicing and looking at it to understand where your opportunities are. Tailoring a solution, that is what we did here. BTE offers all kinds of different products and services, and we chose the ones that we felt would hit the areas where we had the biggest opportunities. So make sure you do that if you're selecting a vendor. Make sure you're working with them to understand, what solution is best for me. Don't just always buy something right out of the box. Leveraging the essential function physical demands analysis process. As we talked to earlier, understanding the detailed work content of everything, the pushes, the pulls, the lifts, the pinch grips, all of the physical activities for every job at your location produces a ton of data. What you do with this data gives you huge power. As I mentioned, it really can help bolster your ergonomics process by feeding into those analyses and looking at what your biggest risks are. In many cases, we identified jobs that we didn't think had as much risk or that may have been overlooked, and we found out that through the PDAs there was a lot of physical effort required, and if we mitigated this effort and improved it, we were able to see big ergonomic reductions as well. So definitely leverage those processes. And demanding excellence, if you're selecting a vendor, make sure you know how passionate you are about this and how bad you want to be perfect. You know, that 0 injuries is your goal, and make sure they can help get you there. Make sure they're willing to work with you and that they have a sense of accountability for when there are failures in our process and our system. If a person gets hurt, you want them to feel bad about it. You don't want them to just say, hey, you know, too bad, right? Some of those happen. So working together to achieve and exceed your goals, it is important. It's about developing a partnership. And I do think that the sites who are utilizing these services are really, they really do have a partnership aspect to the way they operate. The folks on the shop floor, they recognize the therapists when they go out on the assembly line and they call them over. They want that engagement, they want that interaction, and that really is very powerful, because when your folks have somebody that they can go to, that really does help drive improvements in your early intervention, your early reporting, and even then, it helps drive improvements in your ergonomics program because they're calling out issues before it's caused any problems. So really, one thing I'd also like to point out on this slide is improving workforce wellness. You know, I've talked about our journey. That's what we see as the next step for us. When it comes to taking care of our people and making sure our people are performing well, it comes down to wellness as well. So we're looking at programs like Industrial Athlete, but we're taking it even further into our benefits groups and looking at how they eat, providing coaching and classes on cooking, getting physical activity, and really tying this into how we operate in our benefits program. So that's really the next phase for us as we continue on this journey. So with that, it's now time for question and answer. So we'll go ahead and open it up for questions.
All right. Thank you, Angela and Chris. Great presentation. And we do have a lot of questions, so we'll get right to those. First question came in, asked, are PDAs completed for each job or just a sampling of jobs? And how long does it take a typical PDA to take? How long does a typical PDA take?
Sure, that's a great question. Yes, a PDA can be done per station if they're different jobs. As for kind of a sampling, some companies will do job titles. So if you have a job title and there's 10 people who do very similar work because they have the same job title, you can do that. But for the most part, we would do per station, per work being done. If it's different than another station, a PDA is done for each of those. As for how long it takes, it depends kind of on the work. You know, an assembly line that might have a tack time of a minute, we can probably get through those, you know, the data part of it, you know, in under an hour, and then there's write-up. But for jobs such as maintenance or, you know, some of those jobs that maybe have a half an hour to hour tack time or, you know, days to complete the work, those are obviously going to take a longer time because it just takes longer to see all that. But so it depends on the job.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Another question related to the incident rate that you brought up early on. Are those medical aid / lost time per 100 workers or per 2,000 work hours? 200,000 work hours.
Yeah, it's the incidents per 100 employees. So the OSHA calculation.
Okay.
And those were also, by the way, that was OSHA recordables, right? So in that number, there would be some number of incidents that were lost time that would be part of the severity case rate. which was something else we looked at, but that number you saw was just the overall incidence rate.
Okay, great. What is the typical employer size for on-site services?
So for on-site services, we're at plants as few as 200 employees, and we're at plants with upwards of 2,000 employees. Depending on the services offered, at the smaller plants, we might have one clinician, and then if we have more employees or more services, we have some locations that we have 2 to 4 clinicians at. And another important factor, more than size maybe, but really what is the need? So what injuries are you seeing, or is it musculoskeletal related? And then what kind of programs are you looking for? Are you looking for kind of the pre-hire? Are you hiring a lot of new folks, or is it more of the prevention that we're working with existing employers? So with the different services, kind of the menu of services that we do offer for on-site, they really could be beneficial for any size of plant.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question. If POET is considered a medical exam, and if it has identified the individual as having a disability or a condition that limits their ability to do the work, aren't we required to consider reasonable accommodation under the ADA?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And that's actually something that if somebody has a disability, they need to declare that during the test or prior to the test. And if they do, BTE will actually make accommodation for the test for that disability.
Okay. And staying on POET, what is your pass-fail rate for the POET program? Does every employee or job go through a POET?
Yes, so, BTE, we closely monitor all pass-fail rates per employer, but they do vary greatly for industry. So more generically, we'll see on the low end about 9 to 10%, but some industries are upwards of 20% fail rate. Now, keeping in mind if you're up to 20%, these are your very heavy, physically demanding jobs. And that's more just, dependent on the industry. Okay.
What are the qualifications, training, or licensure for the on-site BTE person who providing heat, ice, body mechanics coaching, et cetera?
Sure. We actually utilize ATCs, so athletic trainers. We have some occupational therapists. We have physical therapists, physical therapy assistants, and for more of our stretching, work conditioning programs, we're utilizing exercise physiologists too. So we are really using all the allied health professionals.
Here's a question: how do you get employees to adopt the program? How do you change the culture to get people to embrace the program?
That's a good question.
Yeah. So
time.
Yeah, it definitely takes time, but so really the big piece for employees to embrace is on the early intervention piece, and a big piece of that is getting it out there. As we all know in plants, it can be hard to just get everybody to know anything. I mean, it's a large group of people, and shop floor employees, sometimes it's really hard to communicate to them. So that's the first piece, is making sure that they're aware. And one thing we do is we will put that in basic shop notes that all the teams get and talk about in their little team meetings. We remind them. Sometimes we'll have them actually go out on the radio, the walkie-talkie if the plant has it, and we'll mention that the service is available for people who need it. I mean, really basic strategies like that can go a long way. But it is encouraged, as I mentioned earlier, to have that PT or that person who's administering the program, if they can actually get out there and start interacting with employees, it really helps grow the program. Because when that person has seen a few people, they tell a few people, and those people go, and it does take a little bit of time for it to kind of have that snowball effect. But keeping it visible and really staying in front of people and really making sure they're aware of it is what helps. One last thing I'll add to that is making sure that it's not just work-related. When people, say somebody plays a softball game over the weekend and their shoulder is sore, if they go see that person and that person gives them some stuff they can do for that, that's helpful for them, and they've seen the value and the benefit, and then they'll help spread the love, so to speak. So.
Okay, sounds good. Is it hard to find good workers in certain industries such as manufacturing or construction? And have you found that doing it is? And have you found that doing post-offer employment testing has affected the hiring process, making it harder to find good workers?
Yeah, I will tell you, there are certain areas, Minnesota, we're lucky to have a large, the area where our plant is has a large population base, and there's no shortage of people. However, we do have locations where the unemployment percentage is very low, and finding employable people is difficult. One thing I would suggest, if you're using a process like this in a low unemployment sector, is to point out that we administer other tests as well that may disqualify somebody, right? Like a drug test or certain medical exams, and so it is important to kind of point those things out to show the value that, hey, this is another one of those types of tests, making sure the people that we're hiring can do the work that we have to have them do.
Okay. We do have a follow-up to the earlier question about the ADA and the reasonable accommodation process. Does an employer have to complete the ADA interactive process and determine if there is work for the candidate who fails the POET, if that person has a disability?
Yes. So if they come through and they declare they have a disability, we will make an accommodation in the POET test for them to complete that. If they fail the POET test with a reasonable accommodation, we would take that process. If they pass, the employer would still be responsible for looking into, specifically any other accommodation than they would need on the job.
Okay, sounds good. And we have a couple industry-specific type questions here. One, have you completed this job matching in a healthcare or nursing type environment? Yes,
definitely. So we would handle nursing, CNA, any kind of position like that, just as a regular PDA. We would identify the essential functions and then do a measurement, and we would measure that, and they would all go in that. So, yep, it would really function the same as an assembly line worker, if you will.
Okay. Well, and the other question was regarding the beverage distribution business. Any examples of how it works there and the foul rate?
Again, it would work. Again, depending on the job, we would measure it. I don't have specific fail rates in that industry off the top of my head. But again, it would be job measurement, and we treat, the objective job and essential functions the same. So it would follow the same process.
Applicable to all, okay. When and if a prospective employee fails a POET, are they admitted into a work conditioning type program, or are they simply disqualified from the job?
Nope. So the POET is a pass or fail. If they fail any component of the test, their offer is rescinded. So their hiring is contingent on them passing all of the demands.
Now, one thing to add to that is that employee can retest, and we have a set retest period to where they can, hopefully improve on their physical condition or understand it, and then take a retest after that period.
And like I mentioned before, so we do create kind of a multi-level POET at some time. So you can do kind of placement, if you will. So if you do have some lighter jobs, maybe level 1 or a assembly area that is lighter in nature, and then you have heavier jobs, they can take the same POA and be placed into, what job they physically can perform. But at the end of the day, if they do fail one of those components, their offer would be rescinded.
Okay. Can you accommodate both office and manufacturing assessments at the same time?
Yes. Yep. It would be our same PDA team who would come in and do the work. And so, yep, again, we would handle that the same ways we would handle healthcare or our healthcare worker, assembly line worker, office worker. It's really just identifying those essential functions and measuring the demands that they have to do.
Excellent. And does BTE have any tools to identify ergonomic risk factors for musculoskeletal disorders, or do you use conventional tools such as the NIOSH lifting guidelines or strain index?
Yeah, we use yes and yes. We have a tool of our own, but then we'll also use other tools that are out there more standardized. Again, kind of depending. So when we're doing the physical demand analysis, again, we're looking a lot at the weights and the forces required to perform the job. And so really it comes down to what is the employer wanting to do with these ergonomics. Sometimes it's just as simple as they want to know the high forces, so then we, can report that on our own. But if they want to know about NIOSH and, pushing and pulling and those, then we'll use the more standardized tools.
Okay. Can you talk about PDAs, using PDAs to manage return to work?
Sure. So, again, PDAs are the objective description of the essential functions. So we know what that employee has to do to be able to return to work. So as Chris was saying before, it's a quick matching in JobAble. They don't have to think about it. It really is objective data. The JobAble system that BTE has with software has all the PDAs in it, and then you enter employees' restrictions, and then you use what we call a job classifier report, and it's really a click of the button. You select the person, select a job, many jobs, you can do the whole plant, and then you come out with a report that clearly states what demands or what jobs are exceeding their restrictions. And so that clearly leads you down the path of, can we accommodate this? Are there things that they can do? Or there, nothing that they can't do, everything's outside of their restrictions. And so it really speeds up that process just that way, kind of behind the scenes before, and that takes just a minute. So that's very helpful knowing, again, that first step of the PDAs, that foundation, just to understand what they have to do.
And I'm just going to add, having that objective data like that is, it really is a game changer. I'm sure many of you have been in that situation where you're being asked, can we accommodate this person? And we're in that point of almost creating work for people, right? Well, let's create a temporary assignment. I think we can do that. Let's have this person do this sit-down job that may not actually be a job. That kind of, it helps eliminate that, which is huge. That's very important. So our HR folks who are using this, they really, really like the ability to have something like this, and it has made our accommodation process much more efficient.
And speaking of data, one question here asks: has the impact ever been measured on the health plan for those POET-tested employees? Is there any impact on the health plan? Has that even been measured?
On the health plan, if we're talking about healthcare spend, we have started looking at that data. One thing that makes it challenging is we can see the condition of somebody from a healthcare spend perspective, but we can't see their name. Okay, for obvious reasons, right? And we want it that way. Right. So the one problem is being able to match somebody who did a POET, went through POET, to their healthcare spend or their healthcare condition. I will say, though, we do have another program that's part of our health plan, and that's we call it Vital Numbers, where all of our employees, we do get an insurance discount if we participate, and that's where we take BMI, blood pressure, cholesterol, those kinds of measures, and we do look at that, and there's an opportunity there. I think that's a really good idea, and we can definitely dig a little deeper. So I'm making notes here.
Oh, great. How long does the POET, I know we kind of talked about this earlier, how long does the POET take, but the other part of this question is how do you replicate an 8-hour day?
So we will, so the POET, and if I didn't answer that, the POET generally is about an hour long. I think I might have answered that wrong. So what we do is, depending on the frequency, or, again, the PDAs are measured in occasional, frequent, constant demands. So we create tests that would put that kind of same demand on an employee in a short amount of time. We generally use, we have some time tests that use MTM standards, so kind of those time standards on ability to perform work. It's boiled down pretty quickly, but if they can perform in the same speed and do the amount of work that's needed, we can kind of extrapolate that to an 8-hour day.
Okay. When you identify the essential job functions, are you collaborating with the employees and the supervisors, or is there some type of a document that the employer has already provided, or what's the method for identifying those essential job functions?
Sure, that's all of the above. We'll take whatever we can get. Some plant, if a plant has standard work, we definitely like to see that. Now, standard work is generally steps of a job. That's not necessarily an essential function, but that leads you in the right direction, that you can gather kind of what that purpose of the job is. But definitely we're talking to the supervisors, we're talking to the workers, the subject matter experts. We gather all that information, form what an essential function is if that's not already formed for us from the company, and then we do checks and balances. We go back to the worker, back to the supervisor, back to safety, HR. Does this match? Is this what they have to do? Is this the purpose of the job? And go like that. So it's a very, sometimes we have no documentation and they say, this is the job, figure it out. Observation, we watch it, we figure that out. Some employers are great and they have documents, and that kind of helps the process along, but you definitely can do it either way. But yeah, it's definitely all of the above. We take whatever we can.
The other piece I'd add to that is also on the validation testing side is you're taking employees who have been doing the work, in some cases maybe 20 or 30 years, and you're asking them to replicate that work in the test. And so that gives a huge opportunity for feedback. And sometimes it might, there might be challenges getting people to do it, but we would throw little incentives at them to take it. Here's a gift card, or we're buying you lunch. Will you go take this type of test? And that's usually worked pretty well. And it shows good cross-functional collaboration between, management and the employees, which I think is really important in a process like this.
Yep. Wow. Well, we are just about out of time. Thank you, Chris and Angela. That was a lot of questions. It covered a lot of ground. So thank you both for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. And thanks to everyone at BTE, and thanks to everyone else who attended. Today's webinar is an excellent example of the education you'll receive at the National Ergonomics Conference and Ergo Expo, the largest and leading workplace ergonomics event in North America, featuring education for ergonomics beginners as well as more experienced professionals looking to maximize the results of existing ergonomics, wellness, and safety programs. I enjoyed talking to everyone today. Thanks again, and have a great day.